All right, I'm just going to jump right in and start modeling again. So this time I want to continue. I'm going to do that sort of raccoon mask edge loop that goes all the way around the eyes, both eyes. And then I'll probably go down past the nose and start working on the mouth. I do want to point out that every time I model a face or a head or anything for that matter, I never model it the same way. So this is not the definitive way I model a head, and it's not it's never definitive. Every time it's something slightly different. So I would definitely encourage you to kind of develop your own sort of technique, and I think you'll be, once you develop your own method for doing everything, you'll just get a lot faster with it, and you'll just kind of get your own style out of it too. So I'm showing you the way I model characters, but it's definitely not for everyone, and everyone should try to experiment with different things and sort of develop their own unique style. So okay, so to start with the the sort of outside edge loop, what I want to do is just select the outer edge there and hold down Control and deselect that edge because I don't want to extrude that edge, and just click extrude. Now I'm not sure if I said this in the last video or not, but you have to be very careful with the extrude tool. And generally what I do whenever I use the extrude tool is I'll click extrude and then just hit my W key and just go right back to my normal move key or my scale key, just because I don't really like that that extrude widget. However, this is where you have to be really careful about using the extrude tool, because even though I hit extrude, if I click off of my my model at this point, it doesn't look like I extruded anything, but that extrusion is still there. So if I grab an edge, you'll see that that extrusion is still there. So it's very easy to like hit extrude and then forget about it, and then click that edge again and extrude again, and then your geometry will get very, after a while it'll start to get really messed up. And this is where I like keeping an eye on my poly count, my tries. So you'll see that if I back up to before I hit extrude, I had 188 polygons, and then when I hit extrude I gained like 40 something polygons. So keep an eye on that, and if it just jumps to like an unlikely large number, or if you just glance over at it at some point and it's a lot larger than you think it should be, there's probably something wrong with your geometry. So just sort of just keep an eye on that, and constantly try to keep your geometry clean and organized. So just be careful for that extrude tool. But what I want to do is just use that extrude tool, deselect that edge because I don't want that edge, but I do want all the edges around. Hit extrude and then just hit my scale key, or I can use that extrude widget too. Doesn't really matter, it's up to you. Sometimes I like using it, sometimes I don't. In this case it might actually work alright. So if I just drag up, yeah, see, it doesn't really want to work for me. It's not really moving everything in the direction I want them to move. It's probably because something weird is going on with the normals. So I'm just going to go to my scale key and sort of scale everything up a little bit like that. And then I want to go into my front view and just tweak all of those verts. And I want to tweak them from every view. So these guys, I'm probably going to need to like join them together or close that edge, just because it's starting to get a little bit bunched up right there. So I'll have to figure out something to do with those. eventually. Right now, just kind of ignore them. So I just want to go in and again make smooth transitions everywhere. I don't want any sharp edges. I kind of want everything to flow very smoothly. So that's kind of what I'm after here. And again, I'm just doing like this mask, and this will definitely help get some good edge flow here. So that should be in the center. And again, I may have to come in and change some of this, but I'll deal with that later. One thing at a time. Okay, so that looks good from the front view. Let's check it out from the side. Doesn't look too bad from the side either. I probably want to start bringing these pieces back and forward a little bit to start forming that brow. You know, sort of the side of your face. Your head is very round, and I think people get a little distracted when modeling something like this, and they kind of associate, you know, the front of the face as the front of a cube, and then the side of your face as the side of a cube, and just having that mindset. That's all it takes, is just thinking something as simple as that will give your head a very square look. And it's not square. A human head is very round and egg-shaped. Especially this guy, he has a very round face. So just check that out. It's looking pretty good. I probably want to come in and smooth some of this out, but I'm just trying to get all the basic large forms in first, and then I can go in and do all my tweaking. It's important to get that that good topology laid out first, and then it makes editing small little things a lot easier, because everything just sort of flows in the way that you want it to flow, or it should flow. So don't get carried away trying to work on little tiny details. If you notice something that just doesn't look right, don't get too carried away with that. The first thing you should focus on is just getting good topology and getting those basic large forms. Don't think about things like wrinkles or the creases in the eyes. You shouldn't be concerned with anything like that at this point. We should just be looking at basic forms. So at this point, I just want to, I do have some transforms. I want to freeze transforms, and it won't let me freeze transforms because I have an instance, so that's okay. But I do want to delete my history. Let's make sure that that didn't, nope, we still have our connection there to the other piece. And I'll go ahead and harden all of my normals. Another very useful thing to do while you're modeling is and I should have definitely pointed this out earlier, but sometimes I like to use wireframe on shaded turned on, just so I can kind of see my wireframe. And you know, I can always go back and flip that off again, but that's a very useful thing. The other thing is very useful is going to display polygons and border edges. So if you turn on border edges or texture border edges, either one of those will work. I usually like using texture border edges because that's kind of helpful for you laying out UVs as well. But for now, we'll just use border edges. And then I want to go to display polygons. I think I have to have my object selected for that. So display polygons, border edges. There we go. And then I want to go to display polygons, edge width. And this lets us control the width of our edges. So this is useful because if there's anywhere in our geometry that's kind of messed up, looks like for the most part we're okay everywhere, but you'll notice that around the border of our polygons the line is thicker. And that's very useful because if I go in and say delete a polygon there, and you'll see that that edge is a lot thicker. So then if I go in and I don't know if this is actually going to work the way I want it to, but I'm just kind of trying to explain an issue that happens sometimes with our bridge tool. I think that's bridge, yeah. So they actually fixed this problem. It used to be an issue with Maya, but if you use the bridge, sometimes it wouldn't sew together two of the edges, and it looks like they fixed that problem here. But just for a quick example to show you what I'm talking about here, if I were to do something like this and delete that face and then delete that vertex, you'll see that that line is a lot thicker. So that means that we have a problem there. And if I hit smooth, it's not being too problematic here. Let's turn off wireframe on shaded. So it's actually not too problematic, but that's one little issue you can have that you would never see until it came time to like actually smooth your model or render it or take it into a game engine or something like that. Then you're going to see that problem, and you're not going to have any idea where it came from or when you did that problem or created that issue. So it's good to have that option turned on, that border edge option. Just another useful way to keep a check on your geometry to make sure it's clean. Okay, so let's start going down to the mouth. So what I'm going to do is just grab this edge here, and I'm going to extrude it all the way down to the upper lip. And again, this is something that I don't do it this way every time. Sometimes I'll just model the mouth as a separate object. But I think for this instance, using all the same geometry would really kind of help sell some of the details here. So I'm just going to grab that edge right there, go to my extrude button, and I'm just going to go ahead and move that all the way down to the upper lip. Make sure that that's lined up here, and again, it's probably not going to line up perfectly in both views, so you just have to pick which view you want to kind of give more focus or attention to. In this case, I think I'm going to use the front view. Okay, so then what I want to do is grab my insert edge loop tool, and I just want to add a couple edge loops here to give my nose and lips a little more detail. So I'm just creating some edge loops, and then I'm just grabbing them and I'm going to move them to sort of line up with my reference. And I'll also kind of shape them a little bit here. And this is to, you know, I'm looking at reference here, so that's kind of what's going on. I'm not just guessing at this. I'm actually looking at some reference. I think his nose might end up not being quite as pointy as I want it to be, so I will probably go in and change that a little bit. but for now I think it'll do just fine. Okay, so I have the first part of the little upper lip there. I do want to make that flat because this part of the mouth is very flat, and you have to be kind of careful about the mouth because it'll be very easy to kind of make it look like a bird mouth where it's very pointed. So just be careful. Remember to constantly check things from every sort of possible angle and view. So if you don't, it's very easy to wind up getting a very pointed or squared face. So constantly check things from every angle. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is just grab this edge here, and I'm going to kind of do what I did with the eyes. So I'm just going to go around, except instead of doing one full circle, I'm only going to do half the circle because the other half will be mirrored from this instance geometry on the right side of the face. So let's do this from the front view since we're kind of sticking to the front view a little bit more. So I'll grab that edge and do something like that. And now the shape of the mouth, the human mouth, it kind of he has this curve up, and that's kind of just like the style of the drawing that I made. But generally, people's mouth will have the muscle and the lips will kind of curve down like that. So I'm going to do kind of the same thing I did with the eye over here, where I made that one extra polygon. So it's not actually an edge loop around here, but it is the next edge loop around it is an edge loop. So I'm going to kind of do that same thing with the bottom part of the lip. But first I want to make sure I do have this lined up in the side view as well. So this might be something where we need to use the front and side view together. Now remember that we already have it laid out in the front view, so I only need to move things around in our Z direction. Now, and everything is getting kind of skewed there, so I may have to move those around a little bit independently. Now we're using the front view more than our side view, but that doesn't mean we still can't kind of line everything up. It may not all line up, but we can still kind of get our shapes there that we want. And I want to make sure I check it from my perspective view too, because what can happen again is you're going to start getting a very pointed mouth if you're not careful. So make sure you give it a round shape even in the perspective. Okay, so that's looking all right. We can check it smooth if we want. Okay, so then I want to grab this edge and I'm going to extrude and make the bottom lip. And again, I'm just hitting my G key to repeat the last extrude action, and I'm trying to kind of match up the amount of polygons I have on both sides. So then I'm going to come in and tweak all of my vertices to get everything looking the way I want it to. And at this, it's very low poly, but that's exactly what I want it to be, is kind of low poly. And then I want to match it up in my side view, and then I'll check it in my front view. This edge of the lip's going to come way out. And it may take a few times going back and forth to get everything sort of lined up the way you want it, but that's just kind of the name of the game. You got to really spend time to get things the way you want them. But overall, it's not looking too bad. So next, I'm going to grab this entire outer edge loop here, and I'm going to extrude out just a little bit, not much, just a little bit. Basically, what I want to do is kind of give the top part of the lip a little bit of a sharp crease. And I'm going to use that same edge loop to kind of round out the bottom part of the lip. So after I do that, I'm going to come in and move things around a little bit. These should be fairly close, again, because I am sort of making a crease there. And then over here we can start pulling things apart a little bit, because that's not going to be so creased, although it will be sort of creased down here. And I'll probably need to bring in another edge loop to round out that lip a little bit. So something like that. And then I want to join up this little loose end here. So I'll grab my multi-cut tool, and I'll just put a cut there and there, hit enter, and then I will use my merge vertex tool and just merge those guys together. Alright, so it's not looking too bad. It is kind of pointy right there, and I don't want that. I want it to be rounded out. That might be a problem that sort of fixes itself in the next step though, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to grab, I just want this edge to this edge, and I'm going to extrude out one more time. And it'll jump over to the front view. And I want you to notice how few polygons I'm trying to work with at this point. I don't want to get too overwhelmed. The more polygons you have, it's just the more work for you to do later, because right now we're not really too concerned with the amount of like high resolution detail in our model. We just sort of want to get the basic shapes down. It's much easier to add polygons later once we've sort of figured out, or we have all of our basic things laid out, than going in and having a bunch of them and, you know, ending up most likely deleting a lot of them and remaking them. So be very careful about the amount of polygons you add right off the bat. And no matter the character, especially if you're doing something that's kind of humanoid, notice at the moment I have under 300 tries, and you should be You should be somewhere around there. This, there's two numbers here. This is the total amount in your scene. We have these pretty high res eyes, so keep that in mind, that that's being counted in this number. And then this number is only what you have selected. So just in this one side, I have under 300 tries. So if you're around that, you're okay. If you're, even if you're like 400, you're probably not too bad off. But if you're something crazy like 600 at this point, you should really go in and try to delete some geometry and really, really just focus on only putting in what you absolutely need. All right, so I just want to go in, use my merge vertex tool to merge that guy there together. I'll move some of this geometry around, just looking at it from the perspective view to get it to sort of line up correctly. Check it out from a smooth version, and it's starting to look pretty good. I do want to round out the lips a little bit, so I want to go to my edge loop tool and I want to add an edge loop here, and again this is going to go and curve up, so that's okay. I'm okay with that, and this edge loop will actually come up to our eyes. So I'm going to add an edge loop there, and then I'm going to come in and add an edge loop there. But I do want to come in and tweak every single one of those vertices that I just created. I'm going to come in here and sort of move these around to make those lips look a little bit more round. And even all the way back here, I want to come in and sort of tweak some of this geometry to get it looking a little bit nicer, and you can check it in smooth mode to see what that's going to start looking like. So he's kind of got some dimples there. And I don't want to, again, I don't want to concern myself too much with any of those details. My main concern right now is staying sort of low poly and just focusing on getting the basic forms down. And I think eventually a lot of these will kind of smooth themselves out. I'll probably use my sculpt geometry tool at some point to smooth those out. So be careful about getting things a little too pointy, like that's getting way too pointed there. So I do need to go in and sort of round out that bottom lip a little bit. Let's go ahead and harden all of our normals just so we can sort of get a look at it that way. Soften it, take a look. It's looking pretty good at this point. I do want to start making a little bit of the inside of the mouth. So this will kind of add quite a bit of detail. Eventually what we're going to do is create a mouth bag. So I know it's a funny sounding term, but it's basically exactly what it sounds like. It's sort of a bag that goes on the inside. So whenever they open their mouth when they talk, you don't just see the back of their head behind them. But for now, I just want to create a little bit of a inside lip. So I'll just click on this edge, and I'm going to hold down Shift and double click, and that will just select that edge loop right there. Rather than clicking, just double clicking will select everything. You don't want to do that. So click there, Shift double click there, extrude, and this time instead of scaling out, I'm just going to drag it in a little bit like so, and then we're going to just move some stuff around. And I know this might seem weird that I'm moving these sort of overlapping each other, but this will give us a little bit of a crease between the lips, and one of those things that you're just gonna have to trust me on. It'll all work out, I promise. Let that guy come up like that. Oops. There we go. So now we have a definite crease there in the lips. See, we're at 30 minutes. Okay, so I'll stop this video here. Next we will work on blocking out the entire head, the rest of the head, tweaking our geometry along the way a little bit, and working on the nose, and then we'll probably jump into creating our ears.